Welcome back to The World Today. Israel has imposed sanctions against the Palestinian Authority in retaliation for signing a number of international treaties. Officials say taxes collected on behalf of the PA will be frozen, with limited access to bank deposits in Israel. Palestinian chief negotiator Saeb Erekat condemned the move as Israeli hijacking and also described it as theft. It's the latest in a series of steps by both sides which have strained U.S.-led peacemaking efforts so far. Israel says a move by the PA to join the treaties breached a commitment made before talks resumed last July after a 3-year break. Well, U.S. Health Secretary Kathleen Sebelius is on her way out of the Obama administration following the problematic launch of President Barack Obama's health care law. Regarded by the president's supporters as one of his main domestic achievements, the health care law has been marked by early technical problems and delays. The New York Times says Ms. Sebelius made the decision to resign herself, and President Barack Obama is set to nominate the current budget director, Sylvia Burwell, to replace her. The U.S. President has resisted calls for the health secretary to stand down in the past after the websites where people could enroll for health insurance ran into problems last October. Well, let's get more on this now. John Walker, the VOA correspondent, joins us from the newsroom in Washington. John, thank you for joining us on The World Today. What else do we know about Ms. Sebelius' resignation?
Well, the president gave a news conference this morning praising Secretary Sebelius. He called her, he said she made great progress in her role as Secretary of Health and Human Services. The administration is probably relieved that she has chosen to resign. She's so associated with the flawed launch of the healthcare website, and she's made a number of public relations missteps over the years that she's been in office.
But that website is up and running now. I mean, it is doing well, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. Now it is doing very well. Over signed up for health care in keeping with the president's campaign promise to provide health care to all Americans.
But any other reasons why she could be resigning? I know it was a rocky start, as you rightly pointed out there. John, I'm hoping you can hear me. We're having internet issues. But you did say it was a rocky start for Mrs. Sebelius, but really, did she have any reason to resign? I mean, looking at how well she's done, how far the website has come, and the fact that more Americans are able to latch on to the new healthcare insurance scheme, did she really have any reason to be leaving at this time?
You have to look at the political climate in the United States right now. We're going into midterm elections this fall, very important midterm congressional elections. Secretary Sebelius was sort of seen as a weight around the Democratic Party's neck. And now that she has resigned, that takes away the criticism. And she's being replaced by Sylvia Burwell, who is a very highly respected professional manager. She was confirmed as the president's budget director unanimously. Now she will go back to Congress, face Congress, to be confirmed as Secretary of Health and Human Services.
And how is the opposition, I mean the Republican Party, how have they responded to Ms. Sebelius' resignation? How are they still responding also to the Healthcare Reform Act?
I think that the Republicans in Congress are celebrating Secretary Sebelius' resignation. They have taken this healthcare issue, they've taken the missteps in health political advantage. They've gone to the American people saying that the president can handle even his own legislation. They're using it as what we call a wedge issue going into these fall midterm elections.
And on a scale of 1 to 5, very quickly, John, on a scale of 1 to 5, how are Americans adapting to the Affordable Care Act?
You know, polls are rather 50-50 on the health care issue. A lot of it is partisan, based on party politics. Republicans will never be happy with the health care law. Democrats are very pleased that people are signing up. And they're hoping that by the end of the summer, voters will have forgotten about all and the Democrats will be able to tout this as a success.
Thanks a lot, John. Thanks for joining us on The World Today. John
My
Walker
pleasure.
is the VOA correspondent in Washington. He joined us from the newsroom live. We're here now in Nigeria, where a suit filed by the Lagos State government challenging the power of the federal government to assess and collect taxes on the supply of all goods and services within its jurisdiction has been thrown out by the Supreme Court. Delivering judgments on the suit, Justice Datijo Mohammed upheld the preliminary objection filed by the federal government and dismissed the suit on the grounds that the court lacked the jurisdiction to entertain the suit. Attorney General of Lagos State, Ade Ikpaye, however, insists that the Supreme Court ought to nullify the VAT Act and grant its reliefs, adding that the state will explore other ways of going about the matter. Lawyer to the federal government, Adedara Adedeji, in his response to the judgments, applauded the Apex Court for upholding its preliminary objection by dismissing the suit filed by the Lagos State government.
We will go and look at our options and take a decision as to what next to do. Suffice to say that, this is the final court. If the court says it cannot hear the case, we will look for remedy elsewhere. It's as simple as that. But it's a new angle in our jurisprudence. So I must confess that I've had things here today that I never considered to be the case. But this is the Supreme Court, and whatever it says is law.
The Supreme Court has just given a landmark decision now. As regards the matter is centered about whether the Lagos State government, can collect tax in respect of goods supplied in Lagos State. And on behalf of the first defendant, we filed a preliminary objection, and the preliminary objection is centered on the fact that the Supreme Court has no jurisdiction on this matter because the matter revolves around an agency of the federal government and the Lagos State government.
Well, over in Eastern Africa, 2 Kenyan aid workers have been found lost and disorientated in Somalia after being kidnapped by Al-Shabaab in 2011. The army says Daniel Nguna and James Kiare are now in hospital in the Somali town of Dobli. They're now in the care of Kenyan troops working with the African Union Force in Somalia, that's AMISOM. Kenya sent troops into Somalia in 2011 following a spate of kidnappings in border areas. AMISOM troops are helping government forces battle Al-Shabaab, an Islamist militia which is part of Al-Qaeda and which controls much of southern and central Somalia. Dobli is under the control of Kenyan troops right now and is near its border. But Mr. Nguna has more on the workers who were freed. Mr. Nguna works for Médecins Sans Frontières and Mr. Kiare for Care International. They were both originally kidnapped along the Kenya-Somalia border, where there is a huge aid operation to cope with the hundreds of thousands of Somalis who fled 2 decades of violence. The DAB, which is the largest camp there in East Africa across the border from Dobli, is said to be the world's largest refugee camp. Meanwhile, Egypt's state news agency MENA says 2 members of the Muslim Brotherhood have been killed in a shootout with security forces in the Nile Delta north of Cairo. The news agency said they were part of a group that had opened fire on the police on a road between the cities of Tanta and Al-Mahala Al Kubra in the Nile Delta province of Garbia. The report also claims that they had tried to set ablaze a traffic police checkpoint. A third assailant was arrested, while others got away. Attacks on police and soldiers have become commonplace since the army deposed Mohammed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood last July, following mass protests against his rule. A state has declared the Brotherhood a terrorist group, but the group's leaders say it remains committed to peaceful activism. Oh, and here's one you might want to see. French tightrope walker Denis Jocelyn, I should say, has crossed the Seine River by balancing on a 150-meter-long cable. Cheered by hundreds of Parisians and tourists, the acrobat covered his eyes halfway through. Oh, I'm afraid of this report, but really you have to take a look.
The acrobat performed without harness or net, but several police boats were sailing to retrieve the artist in case of a fall. The tightrope walker said he overcomes his fear by focusing on positive thoughts.
You can imagine the fear I feel when I am up in the air. So you can imagine the power of this positive energy. One has to focus on positive thoughts only, and one should never think about falling or something similar. Otherwise, you get blocked, and you can easily have an accident.
Asked whether he felt uncomfortable because of the windy conditions during his performance, the tightrope walker explained that part of his performance is to tame the elements.
People often think that tightrope is a question of balance, but on the contrary, it's a question of imbalance. So, we play with this imbalance. So if it's windy, we play with the wind. We accept it, we make a friend out of it, not an obstacle.
The acrobat has been practicing for 28 years. It's the second time he walked above the Seine River, the first one being 10 years ago. He said he is the only tightrope walker to have walked above the Seine. Jocelyn said his next performance would take place even higher, but he would not reveal where.
And that tells you passion never gets old. 10 years ago, he walked across the Seine River, and 10 years after, he's making that trip again, despite his age. But, of course, this is one of those acts and activities, so we encourage you not to try at home. Thanks for watching The World Today, though. I am Amarachi Obani. Do have a splendid weekend. Sports News is up next.